Good morning, fans of college football. We are excited today. We have a great guest today. Our guest is an award-winning national college football writer, John Talty, and then we will be discussing his new book that he collaborated with Armen Keteyian, The Price, What It Takes to Win College Football in College Football's Era of Chaos. So, Armen, oh no, wait, you're not Armen. You're John. John, what? How did you meet Armen?
Yeah, we first got connected through our shared agent. He thought that I had this idea, and our agent thought that Armen could pair her nicely. And I've been a huge fan of Armen's work for a while now, and he wrote a great book, about a decade or so ago called "The System" about college football, and I loved that book when it came out, and so felt like a natural pairing. And it's been it was, fun to get to know him, and we had quite a ride working on this book.
Nice. So, why do Americans love college football so much?
What's not to love? I think to us, I think it's uniquely American in some ways. I can tell you an anecdote. I was in Spain a few months ago, and I was trying to explain to someone from Spain about college football, and it was just completely foreign to them because in Europe and things like that, universities don't have big teams, and he just wasn't getting it. And then we explained to him, it's like 100,000 people go to these games. He was like, "Whoa, that's insane!" And so, like, it's very uniquely American. It's a unique system, but I think for us, we have these bonds, whether it's to schools that we attended, schools we grew up watching. We love going on Saturdays to eat food and maybe have a drink or two and celebrate with our communities. And we have these core bonds. And I've lived in the South for a long time now, and all the cliches that you hear are true. It really is a lifestyle down here. It's a religion for some people, and that's what I think makes it great. That passion is what makes it different than the NFL.
Definitely, I agree with you. In some ways, it's better than the NFL because it's more fun.
Right. And I think that's, we see, I grew up in New Jersey originally. So I went, I used to go to Jets games and Giants games. And, you might say that the level of play is better. No argument there. But like you said, I think it's more fun. I think we see there's more like random stuff that happens in college football games in a good way. It's the guy who like drops the ball at the 1 yard line, or it's like this quarterback who's the third stringer who comes in and just has an insane game. There's just more random, I think, things that can happen, which just makes it fun. The unpredictability about it is what's great.
Exactly. So, why is college football in such a tumultuous state?
Greed, I would say, is a big part of it. I think what we've seen, we go back, you can go 40, 50 years, but I think if you just look in the last few years, what drives decisions that are being made? It's money. I think you look at the implosion of the Pac-12, what drove that? It was money. And so I think that's something that has really infiltrated the sport in many ways. You have people who are making sometimes lifetime decisions for universities who have only been there for 6 months or a year, and then they might leave in a year. And we saw that happen throughout the Pac-12 situation. And then money's flown in, through NIL and other things that are not quite how they were anticipated to be, but has had a massive impact on the sport and has created what's really been an arms race for programs to try to hit their boosters up for as much money as possible so that they can field a quality team.
So it sounds like there are a lot of financial, physical, emotional, and social or psychological tools that take place on the players, the coaches, and others involved with college football.
100%. And so, our book is called The Price, and, that's a play on, the money that's infiltrated the sport. Excuse me. Sorry about
Bless you.
that. But it's also, we think the price is, like you said, the toll that everybody involved is having to pay to try to survive. And I think what's so fascinating about this current moment that college football is in is on one hand, the sport's never been more popular. It's so exciting. There are huge ratings last year. I think a lot of people were really excited about 12-team playoff this year. I think people are really excited about some of the games that we are getting out of all the realignment. I mean, I think Ohio State, Oregon might be the game of the year, and we wouldn't have gotten that a year ago. So that's great. On the other hand, we talked to hundreds of them, coaches, ADs, administrators, and quite a few of them are miserable. And they are so upset with kind of this unregulated world that they're forced to live in and the stress that they face on a daily basis. And quite a few of them are considering leaving the sport. And so I don't know how you fix that, but it's a weird dichotomy between it should be never been better, but yet inside people are telling you I've never been more miserable.
Oh, dang. Yeah, quite a contrast. So who are some of the 200 interviews that you went through for this book?
Quite a few. I mean, we interviewed a lot of different people. We interviewed Jim Harbaugh. We interviewed former NCAA president Mark Emmert. We interviewed Mike Loxley. I'm trying to think of, there's been so many different ones, conference commissioners, players, agents. Jimmy Sexton's one of them. There's quite a few, I think, of bold-faced names that people are very familiar with that we talked to. And, I forget the exact total number of people we ended up talking to, but it was quite a bit more than 200. And, a lot of them are quoted by name. Some of them, it was more just giving us, some background context for understanding what things are going. But, we've been working on this. I personally have been working on it for more than 2 years. I think Armen was on this journey for me for more than a year and a half. So a lot of time was put into it. A lot of miles were traveled, and we talked to a lot of people.
So who killed the Pac-12? Was it greed? Was it, the networks? Who killed it?
I think it's both, right? I think that, someone has to offer the money, but somebody has to seek it out too. And, I think one of the primary issues that ultimately led to the Pac-12's downfall, and I go back to this Teddy Roosevelt quote a lot, which is comparison is the thief of joy. And I think for the Pac-12, they compared themselves so much to the Big Ten. They think, hey, we're at the same level, if not better than them academically. We deserve the same amount of money as the Big Ten and their TV rights deals, without the understanding that was never going to happen. And so they demanded a lot of money from ESPN, and they were so far in different worlds that ESPN just walked away altogether and ultimately did a deal with the Big 12. Once that happened, it put the Pac-12 in a tough spot. And I don't think they were ever able to, really rectify that. But, you look at some of the money that was being offered and some of the schools that ultimately left for the Big 12 instead, they're really not making that much more money. They're making a little bit more money than they would have made. But it all happened fast. And it's a sad thing. I mean, this is a 108-year conference that's produced some of the most iconic athletes in sports, and it's all gone. Just like that. And that's, I think, one of the big tolls that I think the sport has faced in the last few years, just because of the chaos that's happening right now.
Yeah, with that going on, I'm surprised that they didn't, just absorb some of the teams from other conferences to kind of try to rebuild.
And there was an opportunity to do that. And you go back a few years before that, and there was an opportunity to have swallowed up the Big 12. When the Big 12 lost Texas and Oklahoma, there was interest in possibly combining forces with the Pac-12. And, we detailed this in our book. They just couldn't get all of their presidents on board with that idea. And, had they done that, they would have survived, and the Big 12 would be the one who died. But they didn't. They passed on that opportunity, and they thought that they were secure, and they ultimately were not. And, now they're in that tough spot where, what do you do? It's the Pac-2, right? And, I know they've had conversations with the Mountain West. I think some of those Pac-2 teams would love to get into a bigger conference, but it's hard.
Yeah, that's what I'd figure. I would keep the name Pac-12 because it was such a prestigious name, but just kind of absorb that Mountain West because you need teams.
Right. But, there's some red tape involved. And, it's trying to figure out how that worked, whether it's a reverse merger or something like that. But, yeah, they've got a little bit of runway here, not a lot, but in the next year or so, they've got to figure out what they're doing and how, if they can survive or if they have to be, merged in with another conference.
How does the this book, The Price, compare with your other book, shoot right behind you, the Leadership Secrets of Nick Saban?
Well, I think this is an expanded look at college football. I think that book was hyper focused on Nick Saban and what makes Nick Saban so great and what made him the greatest college football coach, certainly of my lifetime. Nick Saban's a big character in this book. And I think if you want to know, what were those last years of Nick Saban's coaching career like? What was it that drove him out of the game? This book has those details that have never been reported anywhere else. So I think that would be of a lot of interest to fans. But we also have stuff on Jim Harbaugh in this book, and Jimbo Fisher, and Kirby Smart, and other major figures within the sport. So it's a bigger, more in-depth look, I think, of the sport as a whole. But if you liked my first book, you will definitely like this book as well.
So, who are now the big names in college football?
Well, what's interesting about that, I've had this conversation with some friends recently. I think Kirby Smart is the top coach in the game, but if you think about who moves the needle from a media standpoint, right? For a long time, it was Saban and Harbaugh. The two guys to me that move the needle the most right now are not necessarily the best coaches, but I think it's Lane Kiffin and Deion Sanders. Those are the two probably biggest names that we have in the sport. Deion's picking fights with people left and right, and Lane is the troll king of Twitter, right? So those two guys are both very good at generating media attention in their programs. But if I'm picking what's that actual top layer of coaches, it's more of the Kirby Smart's clearly number one. Dabo, of course, has won a couple of national championships. But that next generation, I think, is Dan Lanning and Steve Sarkisian and Ryan Day and those kind of guys. But we're certainly missing some star power at the top of the sport with Saban and Harbaugh gone now.
Oh, definitely. I mean, their impact on college football, gosh, has just been so overwhelming for the last, yeah. So it has been a pleasure having you on today, John, talking up your book, The Price, What It Takes to Win in College Football's Era of Chaos. Before we let you go, where on social media, where on the web, where can our listeners find out more about you?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, at J Talty. And then, you can pick up a copy of The Price anywhere you buy books, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, tell your local bookstore to get it in. But all of those places you can buy it and probably have it in your mailbox in the next day or two if you don't want to even leave the house. So I really appreciate you having me on, getting a chance to talk about the book. And, I strongly believe your audience is going to love this book and what it will teach them about college football in this current era.
Sounds great. Thank you for joining us.